Breakdown of the ninth tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous, special committees. As such, it should never be organized, but we can create meetings or service committees that are directly responsible to those they serve. This tradition has brought great controversy in the Alcoholics Anonymous community because, while it is true that Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole should not be organized, our structure has special committees to carry the message, which are indeed organized. How is it possible then to have an unorganized movement that can create and actually creates a service organization for its operations? This is the great unknown for many members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Since in common society, we must take into account that everything is directed, whether by a boss or authority, which makes a social system function. No one has heard of any type of nation, religion, political party, or even a charitable association that does not have rules for its members. I have never heard of any type of society that cannot discipline its members or have them obey necessary rules. We are used to obeying some type of authority, to which we must submit to avoid punishments or reprisals against us. That is to say, that everywhere the power to direct or govern is the essence of organization. But in the Alcoholics Anonymous community, it is not this way. That is to say, that no type of human figure, not even a humble committee of people, can give any order to any member of Alcoholics Anonymous and make it comply. Moreover, one cannot even think of any type of punishment or expulsion from a group, Alcoholics Anonymous Service Center. Let us remember that we always have the best judge, which is same irresponsibility. That is to say, that although we as a community do not punish or impose any type of personal rules, the person who misuses their leadership is too irresponsible with their activities within the service of Alcoholics Anonymous. They themselves will be punished. There will always be enough authority to counteract any type of subjugation to the members of Alcoholics Anonymous. The attempt to impose regulations has been tried many times, but the result has always been a total failure. Groups have tried to expel some members, but the expelled have returned to the meeting place and said, "For us this is life. You cannot prohibit our entry." Some committees have instructed many of their members to stop working with a person who constantly relapses, only to receive the response, "The way I do the work of Step 12 is my business. Who are you to judge me?" This does not mean that Alcoholics Anonymous will not accept advice or suggestions from more experienced members, but undoubtedly, orders will not be accepted. Let us remember something very important here about an aspect of recovery from our illness, which is that we, the sick, have a serious problem with anything that has to do with authority. We are ungovernable beings by nature. This does not mean that we will always be so, as this would be more than acceptance of our condition, a yes that could lead us to catastrophe. We do not seek obedience to any human figure per se. We seek to be obedient to the 36 spiritual principles, which, as the first tradition mentions, if we stray too far from them, we will become ill and eventually die spiritually. And this, translating it to our recovery, is an imminent depression in which we begin to walk the path of faith, but without faith. Therefore, although we cannot give orders to anyone, we have realized that we can only make suggestions and offer them in such a cautious manner and without any pain or resentment. Since many people try to be very biased about how they conduct themselves in their lives, and even more so within the group or training place, to serve in the Alcoholics Anonymous community. Today we know that mandates cannot be imposed on alcoholics, either individually or collectively. At this juncture, we can hear a clergyman exclaim, "They are turning disobedience into a virtue." The psychiatrist joins in saying, "Defiant, spoiled, they don't want to behave like adults and conform to social norms." The man on the street says, "I don't understand it. They must all be crazy." Out of ignorance of what our Alcoholics Anonymous community is, they tend not to accept and believe that there can be so much freedom in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that even so, we can function in such an effective and even enviable way for many social entities, which have had to collapse because they could not find a way to cope. However, those of us who belong to AA keep in mind that although there are no orders and we are given suggestions, whether for our recovery or for service, unless each of us follows our suggested 12 steps of recovery as best we can, it is almost certain that we have signed our own death warrant. Their drunkenness and dissolution are not punishments imposed by people in authority. They are the result of their own disobedience to spiritual principles. This same severe threat hangs over the group unless it strives to observe the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group can also deteriorate and die. Have you ever wondered why thousands of groups have closed? Now you can understand. In this tradition, it has been their disobedience to spiritual principles, which, if overlooked, in this case, the AA traditions, will sooner or later lead to the eventual closure of the group. The problem of ignorance of the traditions, and even more so the lack of practice of these in the group, are the main causes of groups closing. Therefore, if we are obedient as doubles, it is not because there is really a certain point of conviction, but rather because necessity has forced each of us to begin to put ungovernability aside. For if the group does not survive, the individual will survive even less. Therefore, we doubles obey spiritual principles, first because we have to, and ultimately because we like the way of life that is the fruit of this obedience. In this tradition, therefore, there is talk of the two great disciplinary measures of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are worthy of a single article for their betterment. But here we will mention them to begin to understand what they are about, and they are suffering and love. This pair of disciplines are what have guided and directed us since the birth of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are convinced that we have two ways or perspectives to visualize our spiritual growth individually and collectively, our life and in group. On one hand, we have the suffering of the things that at some point we do not want to do or that we overlook, such as the practice of the 12 steps for recovery. Let us remember that delay is dangerous and rebellion is fatal. Really, the two disciplines are a coin in the air, where it is our choice to know which of the disciplines we want to understand, whether by the love of God or by the suffering of our disobedience and ungovernability. This fact is what makes us have certain prudence with the breaking of traditions, since otherwise our society of alcoholics and sick people would not survive. Now, it is clear that we should never name boards to govern ourselves, and it is equally clear that we will always have to authorize workers to serve us. It is the difference between the spirit of conferred authority and the spirit of service, two concepts that sometimes are opposite poles. With this spirit of service, we choose our trusted servers from the group, district, area, up to the General Service Board. Therefore, it is highly harmful, as we experience in the second tradition, that the principle of rotation and the good methods to choose our leaders in AA are effective. And for this, we have the method of the third legacy to make this type of readings, where we will choose the most qualified servers to carry out certain tasks. And in this way, the message of Alcoholics Anonymous has been carried to all places in the world. No one is above spiritual principles. No human figure is above God. But it seems that this weighs heavily on many AAs who still remain the God of their own universe. Just as the goal of each AA member is personal sobriety, the goal of our services is to put sobriety within reach of all who want it. If no one did the tasks of the group, if no one answered the phone of the area office, if we did not respond to the letters that come to us or emails, AA as we know it would cease to function. Our lines of communication with those who need our help would be cut off. AA has to function, but at the same time it has to avoid the dangers of great wealth, prestige, and entrenched power, which for other societies are necessarily the temptation. Although at first glance it may seem that the ninth tradition deals with a fully practical issue, in its concrete application, it reveals a society without organization, animated solely by the spirit of service, a true community that has no profit motive. We are lost souls who found and managed to see the light of reason in AA, and for this, the gratitude is immensely great. So big that even to this day, certain decades have passed since the birth of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it remains standing, with growing pains that have led us to lay as a foundation these traditions, which leave us a great lesson on how we can relate to ourselves and, in turn, how to relate to the outside so as not to fall into any type of controversy that at some point may harm Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. This has been all for today. We hope that this article has been helpful to clear up some of your doubts. We invite you to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, share your opinion with us, and in the comments box, tell us what topics you would like us to work on. Happy 24 hours until next time, and God bless you.